We are here in a session. It is October 19th. This is the first session that our department at the SDCOE is offering this year as far as workshops go. We've got 5 for this entire school year. So thanks for joining us today. This is called Get Started with Project Management, and it's our checklist session. I emailed you, if you registered by end of day yesterday, I've emailed you several worksheets and handouts that we're going to be going through. If you didn't get them, no worries, we'll get them to you. And you can follow along. So just letting you know a little bit about who our team are and who we are. Hello, we are the Enterprise Project Management Office at beautiful SDCOE, San Diego County Office of Education. You can say hello to my little project charter because that's what I'm really interested in is planning. Risa, and my name's Perry. I serve as the Senior Director. Risa's on our team. Don't cross Risa if you don't have a project plan. She finds a lack of your project plan very disturbing. Risa serves as our Senior Project Manager and supports many of our initiatives here at SDCOE in our IT division. Andrew loves his coffee, but more than coffee, he loves the smell of stand-up meetings in the morning. Andrew is a project manager on our team. He also helps with many of our initiatives at SDCOE in our IT department. And finally, Candace, she loves status reports enough to say live long and provide status reports. She likes that share out and information sharing. Candace serves as our project management assistant. So it's a team of 4. We work in our IT division at SDCOE. We provide services to our own division in IT, so we support many of our projects. We also work with the districts like you, districts and charter schools, to help with education and outreach and assist you with your work in your IT divisions and IT departments as well. As far as who's here today, thank you for joining us. This is a picture of our lovely county. We're really excited that 20 districts and charter schools registered. So we've got a great representation across the county. So welcome to Chula Vista, Coronado, Del Mar, Escondido Elementary, Escondido High, Lemon Grove, Mountain Empire, National, San Marcos, San Isidro, Solana Beach, South Bay, Vallecitos, Elite Academic Academy, Gompers Prep Academy, Helix Charter High School, La Jolla Country Day School, Pacific Coast Academy, Sage Oak Charter Schools, and SDCOE. One of the things that we're interested in doing from our department to yours is starting to build a community around project management in IT. We're hoping to start having more conversations with all of you. So one of the things that we're aiming to do is to work towards bringing us together, and that will happen through these workshops and different types of events. So one aspect of coming is to simply learn and to be educated, but another aspect for you to consider is just joining the community of IT folks and getting a chance to network and hear others in our field across the county and about the work that they're doing. That there are many ways that can help support you in the work that you're doing, and you all have plenty of information to share with each other as well about your experiences. So let's do that. Let's build that community. We have 3 big aims today, and I'll share those with you in a moment. But ultimately, what it comes down to is our team really loves checklists and templates. We love to have a process in place. So this workshop is really great for you if you work in IT or if you work in an area where you plan, manage, and close out projects. So everything we're teaching is not IT specific. But our aim is to start working with IT folks, and that's our kind of our core audience. But if you wanted to share any of this with anyone else in your organization, it's not for IT only. So everything that we've gathered is from the Project Management Institute, PMI, they're pretty much the gurus. And we've basically customized it to match a K-12 environment. We've taken things that might feel complex or like a little bit too much, and we've really pared it down to make it simple, accessible, and repeatable. So 3 of our goals today for this workshop are, when you leave, we want you to be able to say, I know the major phases of project management. And really, this is core information. It's pretty high level, and it's, again, applicable to any project. So that we'll spend some time to make sure that you understand what those phases are. Second, when you walk away, you should be able to say, I can use the SDCOE project charter template to plan my next project. Now, today, we're not going to spend the entire workshop on the project charter, but we're going to introduce you to it enough so you have access to the template, and you should be able to know generally what would go in there. We have additional workshops and tutorials and a lot of information around the project charter that just could not be covered in a high-level checklist session, but we'll get you enough information today to get you going. And then for number 3, you should say, I can refer to 3 checklists to help me execute and close my next project. That's our focus. Now, what you received through email, and if you haven't, I'll get it to you, are a series of handouts. So you've received our first handout called Project Management Phases. I would recommend that you download these and save them in a folder and make them easy to get to, so they're not just living in your email. You might even want to follow along by opening them up today, or if you've printed them, you might want to take notes on them. For the project management phases, we're going to spend only about 5 minutes, and that's just to get you the information about what can occur across all projects, small, medium, and large. Second, we've got a project charter, and we've emailed to you a blank version, and we've given you a sample. That one we're going to spend more time on because it's got a lot of pieces, so we'll spend about 25 minutes on that piece. Then we have an execution phase checklist, about 12 minutes on that to help you understand what occurs while your project is in motion. So you've planned it, now it's running it, and what are the things that you can be doing. One of the main things of every project is there's some sort of implementation or a go live. So we'll talk to you about how to get really prepared for your go live and what you can be considering. And that's a checklist called our go live checklist. And then last, we've got a closure checklist. So you've gone live. What happens after that? What are the next things as you're wrapping up your project? And then we'll allot time for questions and answers. So we've mapped this out. Hopefully we'll meet our targets, but we'll get pretty close and make sure that we leave enough time for questions at the end. If you've got questions throughout, please feel free to pose them. We do not have to save them till the very end. In fact, it's even better if you pose them as we're on that piece, and that way we can speak to it even better. Okay, now one more piece of housekeeping. We did email you Teams cheat sheet, and if you're new to Teams, I just wanted to call out 2 things that are going to come in handy during this session. One is we would love to interact with you. So we've got a chat button. It's either at the top of your screen if you're on the desktop app, or it's toward the bottom center if it's in the if you're on the web version. But the chat screen is where you're going to go to put in information. So if we ask you for a question and we ask you to reply via chat, that's where you can put it. If you've got a question, you can pop it in the chat. You can also use the raise hand. And when we get to just some dedicated question and answer time, we're going to ask you to raise your hand. So there's a raise hand feature, and that puts your hand up, and we'll be able to call on you and help moderate the conversation. There's other features that you can take advantage of, like reactions are fun, and feel free to check out the features and use them as you need to. We do ask that you mute and unmute as necessary. We love cameras on for engagement. If you're in a place where you can have the camera on, it really helps us, again, build that community and work with you and get to know you. All right, so housekeeping done. We've had a chance to meet. Let's go ahead and keep moving here. We're actually going to move into our first handout. It's the Project Management Phases document, and that's a PDF that we sent to you. And let's just take a look at what's inside of that document. So at the top, you can see it says Project Management Phases, and you see these 5 things: initiation, planning, execution, closure, and then something called monitoring and controlling. If you were to go read the PMI Bible called the PMBOK, you would read about these 5 phases. What we've done in our work at SDCOE is we've really trimmed it down for us in the work that we do, and we really focus on these 3: planning, execution, and closure, with the while acknowledging that monitoring and controlling happens throughout all of those. So this is really how we've interpreted what PMI has to say, and this is what we focus on. As far as initiation goes, that's the first one. Initiation is when you have this inkling of an idea. You're just starting out and exploring whether you will pursue a project. In our work, we don't really have a lot of initiation time in our particular division. It's almost like we already know that something is needed, and it either comes from a requirement that's out there, or legislation that's changed, or there's a need that our superintendent has. So for us, we kind of just kind of start planning in our work. But planning is such a critical process. We've devoted a ton of time to it. And that's where we've changed in the work that we do. We've built in a lot more time to properly plan a project. And if there's any takeaway you might want to have today, is that's one of them. Allow ample time for your planning. In our workflow, we're typically doing things like writing a project charter to define the project and really gather all the pieces. It forms the backbone of our project, and it gives us clarity about what we're going to be doing. So it's really important that that project charter happens before any work begins. Sure, you might be doing a little bit of requirements gathering or a little bit of research or some prep, like some discovery, but you don't want all of your team members off doing work and getting started and generating files and writing notes without really all of it mapped out. Notice that we've got other key activities in the phase after project charter. So all of these things down here, some of them fit into every project, some might be only for large projects. So you'll have to look at this entire model and figure out, not every project needs it, but many of them do. So a file repository for storing files and getting it organized so people know where to put what. Defining and organizing the work. This one is huge. So making sure that you've got some sort of living, breathing plan that helps you monitor all of the tasks and what's happening. That typically happens in some sort of software these days. Having a kickoff meeting to tell everyone what the project is and getting everyone on the same page before the work begins. Figuring out who your stakeholders are and really identifying how you're going to start working with them and forming your ideas around how you'll be communicating throughout the project. All of that should happen in planning. Once you move out of the planning phase, you've done all these things. You've got everyone prepped. The work's been defined. You know what to do. You've got your milestones. You've set up, a plan. That's when you move into execution. And this is when the work begins. And at this point, you're really focusing a lot on monitoring the tasks because this is all the work. So projects tend to have development or configuration or research and testing. Training typically happens as projects, sending out communication. So all of those are tasks. All of those are things that need to get done. And someone needs to make sure that that's happening. Now, ideally, you're going to use software that will help you with that or some sort of tracking system. Communication is very important in this phase. And so all of these next things here are around communication, status meetings, meeting with the team and the people who are working on this, meeting with the vendor, writing and sending status reports to keep people informed, sending communications out, and then ultimately leading up to your go live and being really well planned for that so you're ready to go. Now your project doesn't end at go live, and so we've got this last phase called closure, and this really is a time for you to consider this as a really important bookend to your project. So essentially you're discovering what could we have done better? Let's have a lessons learned to figure out what we can take to our next project. A survey, let's find out from the folks who we deployed this solution to, what do they think? Are they satisfied? Does it meet their needs? Does it even do what we had set out to do in the first place? Summarizing all of this in a final report so you've got something documented, and even presenting it back to your sponsor or your leadership team or whomever needs to have access to that information. And then probably one of the most neglected and a very important piece, celebrating the success of your project. We did it. Let's get invigorated for the next project. And then finally, a sign off. Let's make sure that we've got everything in order before we're on to the next project. So we're getting ourselves organized, archived, there's handoffs that have occurred. Imagine what would happen if we didn't do any of these things. You might be off to the next thing right away, kind of repeating the same mistakes or not really knowing how you did, or not leaving time for people to have the closure that they need before they're on to the next body of work. So this is the project management phases. Like I said, this comes from PMI. We've tailored it and narrowed it down to meet our environment and our needs at SDCOE within K-12. We're sharing it with you. In no way do you think you need to do every single piece right away, and in no way should you think that every project needs all of these. It's going to be kind of a trial and error time for you to figure out which pieces are really effective for you. And maybe a large project might have all of these. That's how we do it for us. Our largest projects, we do every single piece. But on our smaller ones, we might say, you know what, we don't really need to have this type of work in this particular project, especially if it's super short. If it's going to be a 2-week project, we're not going to invest all this time and all this effort for something that quick. But if it's a 4-month, 6-month, year-long, multi-year project, for sure, you want to have these pieces in there. Okay, so you've heard about the phases. I'm already ready to hand over to Andrew, and Andrew's going to help us cover the project charter, our next document.
All right. So I know Perry just said you grab the pieces that you need that are applicable to the project, that are appropriate for the amount of work you have, but the charter is probably one of the most useful ones you can grab. I wouldn't do it for a day project. I wouldn't do it for a 3-day project maybe, but I would do this for almost every single project I have. Is anybody currently using project charters in your work? No, good. So we're all going to learn something. So the project charter, it's a document that is created early in the initiation and planning phase as you're starting to kind of do the ideation around your project and figure out what your project is. That's when you're going to be creating this document. And you'll be creating this with your project sponsor, with your project team, with stakeholders, anybody that really needs to have input onto what the project direction is. This is the group you're going to do it with. The main purpose of the project charter is that it formally authorizes your project. It says, yep, the boss says this is great. We're going to go ahead and commit resources to this. But it also gives a high-level view of your project plan so that you kind of have clarity around what the project is before we get too far along. And I want to say putting in the work here will save you work in the future, and it will definitely prevent conflict eventually. If you've ever had those projects, I've lived this, where you've worked for months and months, a year on a project, you've spent, maybe $100,000 on the project. You get to the end, you tell your CTO, hey, we're done. And then they say, well, I thought you were going to do this. And you're like, that wasn't part of the plan. I thought we were all on the same page. And then you have to kind of scramble and tack on these additional features at the very last second. Writing a project charter up front and going over it with your sponsor would have prevented that kind of a scenario. So right there, I mean, like, it's a huge thing for me. I do want to say, ask questions in the chat as we go, just like Perry said. We'll also have about 8 minutes for questions at the end of this if my pacing's on point. So definitely keep your questions. We'll try to address anything you got. First, we're going to get into one of the handouts you were sent. This is the project charter Word template. We're going to do a high-level walkthrough of this. It has 6 parts. And I want you guys to take this handout, use it for your work, tweak it as you need, change your branding if you want. You really make it yours, use it for your work. First off, your project charter has your project name. This is the formal name of the project, and also your start date and your end date. And of course, those are kind of arbitrary because timelines slip, but do your best guess so that you can kind of be realistic. Next, we've got our project organization, and this is all of the people involved in the project. So who your project manager is, if you have a project lead along with the project manager, who your sponsor is, that's the person that's authorizing and endorsing the project, the kind of ultimate authority over the project. You have your steering committee, which is, whoever your leadership is that's kind of guiding that project. Your stakeholders, and stakeholders are anybody affected by the project, not just your customers, but anybody your project affects. You're going to kind of break them down here. You don't have to list every single person, but mainly your groups of people that might have unique needs or communication requirements, that sort of thing. Next, we've got our project team. So these are the people actually doing the project work. For a small project or medium project, you might just have a project team. And for larger projects, you might have kind of your core team that's attached to the project the whole time. And then you have your extended team that are brought in as they're needed. And then last, you have others involved, which is just your kind of catch-all box for the random people that might get pulled in here and there. Next, we've got our project details, and this is broken into several sections. The first one being the project description. This is just a brief description of the project. It is in layman's terms. It is your elevator pitch. This is not the time to get too techie. So really, I kind of frame this as, if you had to explain this to your superintendent, this is where you would do that. Next, we've got the scope, and that's where you get specific. That's where you're saying very detailed terms. This is what we're doing. Bam, 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 bam. And sometimes it's useful to put what's not in scope, especially if you know that's going to be a point of contention where, oh, I know they're going to ask about this and that's not part of the project. Sometimes it's helpful to put that so that you can define that. And later on at the end of the project, when they said, what about this? You can say, nope, you agreed. This is out of scope. We can add that on afterwards as a separate project, but that was not part of the scope of this project. And then we've got deliverables, and these are the products or results that you expect out of this project. Typically, they're thought of as tangible things, but they can also be intangible. So everybody thinks they're physical, tangible items, but they can be intangible. We'll get into that more when we go through our example. Next, we've got goals alignment. Don't use our goals, use your own goals, but board goals and division goals are what we put here. Then we've got objectives and success criteria. So this is how do you know the project's successful? And try to be specific and don't get so caught up on the method, if that makes sense. So for example, our goal might not be to install firewalls or rather install a bigger network system. Our ultimate goal would be expand the network throughput. Those are two different goals technically, if that makes sense. It's kind of really in realistic, like the end result, objectives and success. So we don't want to miss the forest for the trees, for example. And then finally, we've got the risks. Now, risks will emerge throughout the project. You can't see every risk ahead of time, but you really want to kind of break down what are the risks that I know of ahead of time, and if possible, the mitigation strategies for those risks. And they don't have to be risks that are occurring now. They could be like, okay, it's halfway down the line. What if this happens? How are we going to handle it? Try to just figure out that as much as you can ahead of time. Moving on to the project schedule and milestones. Depending on how heavy your project planning is further down the line, you may or may not get really fleshed out here. If I know I'm going to be creating a really detailed schedule, I'm not going to get super detailed here. But if I'm not creating a detailed schedule later on, then try to get more detailed here so you have something to work off of. But really, you want to break down your milestones, and those are the big key points of the project that are, we've crossed this, we are making progress. Those are big progress points. Try to have an idea of what those are and when they should be occurring, so that you have a better idea of what the project looks like when you go talk to the sponsor about the whole plan. And if possible, break down who's going to be responsible for it, when the milestone work starts, and when it's expected to end. Really, the point is to prevent you from 6 months down the line being like, oh, shoot, I forgot to think about that. Now we've got to slide the whole project schedule back 3 months. You want to avoid that by doing that planning here. Getting towards the end, we just break down the tools that are used in the project. So if you're using project management software, what software, where, and do the people that have need access have access? Your communications tools, if you're using a file repository where all the files are going to be dumped, if there's a public-facing website, just whatever tools are used, list them out here and make sure that people have access to them. There's nothing more annoying than doing project meetings, and then a month into it, you'll find out that half the project team doesn't have access to things, and they haven't been telling you that. So avoiding that ahead of time is the ideal. And then last, we just kind of have other items to consider. You don't need to write a dissertation here at the end of your project charter, but it's really just don't forget about your budget planning. Don't forget about your communication planning. Make sure you're tracking and sending status updates. What's your training plan, the documentation plan, and how are you going to close out the project? Just don't forget to think about that stuff at the end. Now we're going to run through an actual real project charter. This is one of the other handouts you guys were given. This is from our MFA rollout last year. So it is a real project charter. This was used for just about a year. And hopefully it provides a pretty good example. I've got to zoom in a little so I can see all this. So at the top, we've got the official project name. We've got our start date and end date as best we could guess. We've got our project manager and Candace as our project management assistant. We've got our sponsor and we actually broke this up. We did project sponsor and we did executive sponsor. So we have the project sponsor that is expected to be involved on pretty day-to-day decisions. But when those really big questions come up, we're kind of lifting those up to the executive sponsor. So if there's a big turn in direction, there's a big spend that we need to do, any real impactful decisions would get floated up to the executive sponsor. Then we have our steering committee, which was our ITS senior leadership. Moving over, we've got stakeholders, which is everybody affected by the project. And in this case, it was every permanent county office employee and the cybersecurity team. Then we've got our project team. And like I said, we broke this into core team, and then we had kind of our extended teams. So our core team was the cybersecurity team, which was working on this pretty much 24/7. And then we had our graphics and support leads kind of brought in as needed throughout different phases of the project. Last, we've got the others involved, and this was, again, our catch-all of just random little things that aren't attached to the project real heavily, but they're brought in here and there. So Harry for instructional guidance, because she's fantastic at that. Our graphics department, as they were brought in for graphics needs. Our communications specialist, meeting creative services team to produce a video. Our support teams, which often get left out of projects and absolutely should not be. Our network team, our legal team, and our external vendor, which is Duo. So don't forget your external project members. And then next, we've got our project details. And if I'm not going to read all this now, but you can see what I mean. This is the layman's terms. This is the superintendent's elevator pitch. This is not, we're not getting carried away with MFA methods and hardware and software requirements. We're just breaking it down to the real simple core of what that project is about. Then we get into scope. We do get a little bit more specific, which is that all permanent employees will be going through MFA, which apps will be secured by MFA, the fact that employees will be issued a USB security key, and they'll also be given the option to use Duo Mobile. And then we broke down what was out of scope, because we knew that would be the question, which is we're not touching Google, we're not touching the SIS, and we're not touching PeopleSoft. We're also only securing apps. We're not doing the Windows desktop MFA. So having that differentiation is important, because you would hate to get done with this huge MFA project and then your CTO says, well, why am I not getting dinged for MFA when I'm trying to log in? I should be. You say, well, that's not part of the project. That was a huge different thing to do. Having that written out early is going to save you some huge headaches. And getting into deliverables, again, the products are results expected on the completion. So we just did physical USB security keys, a PowerPoint presentation that can be used for many things, a why MFA video, instructional videos, job aids, opt-in form, a dedicated phone number for MFA emergencies, for planning documents, and the incident item that got added to our ServiceNow catalog. Then we aligned it with our goals, and then broke into the objectives and success criteria. And again, this is the real root of what success means. Not we deployed MFA, but that SDCOE employees will be secure with their password, and accounts and data are protected. And then we broke down a little bit more what that really means, which is a USB security key and instructions, that every employee can successfully use the USB security key and instructions, which are clear and easy to follow, because sure, issuing a key is one thing, but actually having staff use it is completely another thing. And that's why we're trying to break down to the root of what success means. And that employee work is not interrupted, because technically you could check that box. Yeah, we employed a MFA. Nobody can get in, but the project success is awesome. That's not success. You've just impacted everybody's work. So really don't get too caught up on the tech of what success is. Then we broke into the risk, which one of the big ones was, of course, loss of productivity if people are waiting to troubleshoot. And then our mitigation was to have support procedures that would address those issues immediately. What happens if employees lose keys and don't have backup? And then text is getting tiny here. We had a plan for bypass and an MFA hotline to address those immediately. Lack of manager support would impact adoption, so we brought managers on board before employees were even asked for help. And bad mailing addresses in PeopleSoft, so we had people validate email addresses ahead of time, or physical addresses ahead of time. And then last off, USB security keys cannot get lost in the mail or delivered, and there was no mitigation for that, which is fine, but really try to plan your mitigation as much as you can ahead of time. Then we get into project schedule and milestones. This one's pretty detailed. Personally, I don't usually get too detailed on the charter project schedule, because I'm creating a separate project schedule that's much more granular. And in this case, we actually did a calendar view, so we didn't just break down a list of milestones. We had a little calendar for kind of ease of reading. I'm not going to go through the whole calendar or the milestones, but I do want to kind of give you an idea. These milestones are very, very thorough. Yours don't always have to be. The point is kind of, these are points that we know that the project is continuing to progress, the project is being successful, and they're a motivation tool. So you get into that that kind of trudge of you never feel like there's progress and it's moving very, very slowly. These milestones are meant to be kind of gates of saying, hey guys, we got to this big point. We've chosen an MFA vendor and now we can move forward with implementation. That's a milestone. We've implemented the first wave of staff that we rolled MFA out to. That's a milestone. The point is motivation, progress, and kind of easy at a glance tracking of the project. And let's see, I'm not going to read all these. And then don't forget, project closeout, it always gets forgotten about, or kind of you get done with your go live, and then you're like, all right, we're going to get on to the next thing. We don't really need to do closeout. You can get away with it, but you're going to start making the same mistakes over and over. If there are communications problems, if you're doing anything wrong in the project, this is kind of the time to find that out, and also to celebrate the work that was done and kind of feel real closure about the project, not feel like you're just constantly doing the same project for the rest of your life. Last off, we just got into tools, which was a Monday.com board and Microsoft Teams. Then we listed what board and what team channel. And last off, the items that we can, other items, which was our budget to include the licensing, the keys, and the printing and mailing, the communications plan. And you can see there that line, a full communications plan will be developed, and it was. So it's really like you don't have to break the whole communications plan here, but just remember, you should probably have some sort of plan about how you're going to communicate. How we're going to track and send status updates, what the training and documentation plan is. Sometimes there's not one, that's fine, but the point is just don't forget to plan for that. And then what are we going to do to close the project out? Real quick, kind of want to go reverse a little and just give you the overall view of what the project charter benefits are. The point of the project charter is to kind of figure out your who, what, where, when, why, and how of the project. So who's involved, who's doing the work, who's it for, and who's impacted. What's the scope? What are we delivering? What are the risks and what is the cost? Which database, which environment, which physical location, room, building, etc. When is the project happening? What's the schedule? What are the milestones? Why are we doing this project, which is a big one? And then how does this align with our mission and goals? How will we know we're successful? How will we communicate to the project team or stakeholders? And last off, I want to end with, I have a very condensed version of what I just said on YouTube. Feel free to click that link and kind of save it for later. You can also find it on our EPMO website. I also want to plug that we do have a workshop on November 9th from 10 to 12. So if you want to get more exposure and practice, it's going to be, like I said, a 2-hour workshop. So it's going to be very in-depth on fleshing out how to really get into project charters. And we'll share the registration link with you before we wrap up today. Last off, does anybody have any questions about writing a project charter? We do have a little chunk of time here, so don't feel like you're dragging us out if you get a question. Richard, you don't have questions for me? I have to call you out. So, for example, one question we get a lot is when is a project charter written? And I don't know, Perry or Risa, if one of you guys could kind of give some insight on that.
I think, yeah, go ahead, Perry.
No, take it, Risa.
Okay. So honestly, the charter should be written before any work is done, right? Like sometimes we're like, oh, this needs to happen. So we jump in and we start doing the work before we really plan out what is it, what we're doing? What are we trying to accomplish? How will we know when we're done, right? What, as Andrew mentioned, what's in scope and out of scope. But so really the charter should happen when somebody says, hey, I think we should be doing this. And the charter should be done before any of the work gets started, because otherwise you get started down the path of doing the work. And, you know, without the plan, you're like, wait, you know, how do we know when we're done with this thing, right? So anybody ever had projects that just kind of kept going forever and ever and ever and never ended, right? So charters kind of help you define that beginning and that end point of your project.
Thank you for pointing that out. That's such a big thing. Those projects that never end and they just kind of mush into being an operational thing you just now have to deal with. Project charter will help you figure out where the end is, which is a great thing to know when you're going to stop doing this work. Another question we've got a lot is who's involved in putting together a project charter? So is it just the project manager that's sitting there in a closet doing this alone?
In my experience, we've yielded so many more benefits when we have a lot of people part of the process. So for example, if we're going to roll out a new system and there's a whole support team that's going to support that system, why don't we talk to them and get their input about some of the pieces that we need to be considering? So let's get their manager or their support lead in. For any of our projects that require communications, we might work with our communication specialist to think about best practices for internal communications. And really, we're just kind of touching and tapping into those people so we can start thinking about milestones and what their needs are, and just to get that big picture. The other thing I wanted to point out is I've found that the project charter doesn't happen in one single sit-down session. It's an iterative process that takes quite a bit of time. So I tend to allot a lot of time to meet with our CIO or whoever the project sponsor is, and sitting down and really figuring out, why do you want to do this? What are your goals? What are your biggest fears for this project? Like, just asking a lot of questions and starting to form the charter. And again, that iterative process. Sometimes when you get to a section like risks, like, oh my gosh, we might have we have to get 1,000 security keys to people through the US mail. Because this is during the pandemic. Where are their addresses even right? So there was when we had that light bulb occur, because we talked to the right people about it, then we're like, we need this whole process and time to make sure that we have addresses correct and that these even go out. So just consider not doing it by yourself. Consider talking to a lot of people as you're gathering information. It'll give you better results and better planning.
Absolutely. Another one, if things change, do we have to go back and rewrite the charter?
So this happens to me a lot in my projects, so we write the charter, the sponsor signs off on the charter, and then it happens, stuff changes, right? There may be late scope, although we try to avoid it. We might have to extend the schedule because development or testing takes longer than anticipated. We don't go back and edit the charter, we edit the project plan. The project plan becomes the source of truth. The project charter is more of just the snapshot in time at the initial onset of the project, just to kind of give us the guide, but then any changes that happen throughout the project happen in the plan.
And what do you guys think are the hardest parts of writing a project charter?
In my experience, people are really good at the deliverables. They knock that out, like, oh yeah, we're gonna bam, bam, bam. And then when it comes to the success criteria, what I've seen is they just basically say, okay, our success is the deliverables. And that's one way of looking at it. And that is true. If you have this list of things that you want to create and roll out, but I think there are other things that we should be considering, like, how does this align back to our mission and our goal? What are our true goals? Are we trying to increase efficiency? Are we trying to help teachers so they spend less time doing A, B, and C? Like, whatever that big thing is, and that's why our project is important. I think that's what we should be measuring. And so really identifying what the success criteria up front seems to be challenging. And the other thing I've noticed is I think the scope piece can sometimes be hard. And I think when you pointed out writing down what's out of scope, sometimes that is a good starting point. If you're kind of stuck on how to write the scope, sometimes you can just say, well, what are we not going to do? And everyone loves to talk about that. So get all of that down. Okay, so we're not doing that. So what are we doing? And then you can start to define it. That's kind of a tactic I've used to help when we get stuck on the scope piece.
I like that. I like starting with what I don't want to do. I can make a long, long list of what I don't want to do. And we've got just a few seconds left for our last question, which is what happens after you've got the charter?
So what do you guys think? You were hearing us talk. So if you wrote this charter, what would you do with it? So put it in the chat or raise your hand and we'll call on you. What do you guys think?
Richard, I like that you answered quickly so that I didn't call you out. Good thinking.
So Bradford says he would add it to his tool. Yep. So great, you created this beautiful document. Does it, get filed away? Does it get stuck in a drawer? What happens to this thing?
It gets stuck on a reoccurring meeting appointment.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be honest, like I keep referring back to it. So as my sponsor wants to add more scope to my project, I go back and I kind of pull out that chart and go, remember, like this is what we said was in scope. This is what we said was out of scope. if we want to add that, we're going to be extending our timeline, or we're going to need more resources to get this done. So I kind of use it as a reference point to then have conversations throughout my project as new things come up that we need to address.
And personally, I'll use that just as a kind of overall guide as I'm building out the rest of the project plan and I'm continuing through the project, just using that to kind of, like Risa said, just guide the overall direction of the project and stay on course.
Yeah, we also use pieces of it for our kickoff meeting. So when we do our kickoff meeting with our whole project team, we'll pull those pieces out to tell them, hey, this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it, and this is our schedule, and so lots of great information.
Andrew, could you bump the slide back to show the example one more time? I just wanted to call
Sure.
out at the, thank you. At the top of the project charter sample, you might notice we had this start date of January 4th, 2021, and it ended October 22nd. We got this project charter authorized at the very top. Do you see where it says project charter authorized by Terry Loftus on January 22nd, 2021? It's in italics. So we started writing the charter, we started doing some discovery, we started trying to figure out, what's our technical solution? Okay, we're going to pick Duo. Like we did all of that while we were writing the charter. So in real life, it's not always perfect. I wanted to point that out. So sometimes you are doing some pieces to get the information that you need. However, my point here is that we did get this authorized, and that's a really important piece. Is the charter serves as a document that you can take back to your sponsor, your steering committee, whoever is saying yes, to basically get that green light. And so you've done all the thought work. You've got this plan. This is what we're anticipating. This is what we think the risks are. We're going to go live on this date. Here's how we're going to communicate. Like, here's all the people involved. What do you think? Is this what we're agreeing on? And you get that authorization from that key person. And it ties back to what Risa said later. So when new scope might want to be introduced, or we've got these new needs, it's kind of like, well, what we agreed on is this. And if you tell me we're going to have to add on this other solution, we weren't planning on doing Google at this time, but if that's so important, here's what we're going to need. We're going to need to adjust our dates, or we're going to need more resources. Like it gives you the ability to have that conversation about how you can flex on your project when you have it documented and when you've had it authorized by that key person. So I would say one other thing to do after you write it is to make sure that everyone, especially the final decision maker, is in agreement.
All right, so if you guys have questions that pop up, you think more about the charter, throw them in the chat. We can answer them in the chat. And other than that, I'm going to hand off to Risa to talk about our first checklist.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. All right.
That was slick, Andrew, how you bumped forward right to that slide. I like that.
Yeah.
I know. I was like, oh, great. I'm going to have to forward a bunch of times. Thanks, Andrew. All right. So moving on from the charter, our charter's been authorized. We're ready to start executing our project. So we're going to walk through some of the key activities of the execution phase. And as the project leader, project manager, you want to keep this job aid handy. It's really just a grid with 5 blue sections, but we're going to talk about each one so everybody's really clear about what we're talking about on each one. So this was a PDF that was sent to you via email, so you are welcome to bring it up and go through it as I talk through it, if that's how you like to process new information. So here we go. Okay, so in the key activities of the execution phase, we want to make sure we're monitoring progress and keeping track of that calendar and those milestones. So we want to monitor the project plan frequently. So this project plan is different than our project charter. A project plan is like the actual steps we're going to take to do this project. So we generally like to monitor on a daily basis. We recommend team members add their own notes and update their own color-coded statuses. So again, kind of a more modern view of project management rather than the project manager kind of keeping control of the project plan. We tend to use a more distributed approach or model where we encourage our project team members to contribute their own thoughts and progress and stuff to our project plans. So like we've said before, the project plan is really your source of truth to find those due dates, who's responsible, provide any updates. Again, we don't go back and edit our project charter. All of our changes are in our project plan. So by monitoring it, we're watching the work and those updates as they occur. So the next thing we want to do is we want to check in with our team members as needed. So Part of it's, yes, making sure that their tasks are completed on time, but it's really more about establishing that rapport and that relationship with your team, making sure there's no roadblocks and keeping those lines of communication open. So if there's something that comes up, we want our project team members to feel comfortable coming and telling us. Our team members are the ones who are getting the work done. So we want to make sure that we're treating them with respect and giving them everything they need to be successful for our project. So, again, monitoring the project plan and checking in with those team members is really critical to keeping our project on track. Okay, so the second section says plan and conduct meetings and determine action items and decide next steps. So these are the two kinds of meetings we generally tend to do. We tend to lead status meetings. So these are just an opportunity to provide new information, share updates, talk about the project plan, talk about any challenges or roadblocks, demo new functionality we built out, so on. So how often you meet and how long you meet is really up to you. It's going to vary by project. So, as a simple example, you might have a standing weekly status meeting just to bring team members together and check in. So again, just depends on how big your project is, how long your project is, and how distributed your team members might be. And then the other type of meeting that we tend to do is stand-up meetings, and these are generally as needed. So they're typically a short daily 15 minutes or less meeting, just to check in, go around the room quickly, see how team members are doing. The typical stand-up meeting questions are kind of like, what did you do yesterday? What are you working on today? And just are there any roadblocks in your way? So again, as project managers or project leads, our goal is to remove those roadblocks from our project team members. So again, it just allows everybody to check in and address any short-term challenges. It's not the time to do any heavy-duty like troubleshooting. So people, we're all in IT, right? We all want to fix the problem, and so the stand-up meeting is not the time to dig deep. You want to take that offline. It's really just a quick check-in, and then if there are issues addressed, you want to take them offline. So again, these are the two types of meetings you can use. Again, as needed on your projects. There's really no hard and fast rule. We just want to make sure that if you're choosing to do meetings, that you want to make sure that they're purposeful and effective. So at a minimum, please make sure that you have a purpose or agenda on the meeting invite. Again, so people know why they're coming to the meeting and they can be prepared. You don't want to have meetings just for the sake of having meetings, right? Everybody agree? Show me a thumbs up. No meetings just to have meetings, right? Okay, good. All right, moving on. So let's talk about managing our project. So 3 more things we need to do here. So we need to identify any new activities or adjustments to the plan. So again, we know new scope happens. We try to limit it as much as we can, but new tasks pop up. We can't identify absolutely everything during our project charter phase. So if there's new tasks or activities, we just want to make sure we add them to our plan. In our case, we add them to Monday.com is the project management software that we use. And we just make sure that we're capturing all that and adding to the plan. Again, if it's new scope, like as Perry mentioned in the MFA example, if somebody wants to, add a whole new thing that we're going to add to, MFA, like Google, again, think back to those triple constraints, like, if we add new scope, what's that going to do to our timeline, or what's that going to do to our resources? So it's not that you can't do it, it's just you need to consider the impact on the rest of your project. So speaking of, we want to monitor those risks. So for example, going back to that MFA example, if we add Google to the list of things that we're going to include in MFA, what are the risks of doing that? Again, could be, not having enough information about how we do the integration, not having the resources available, not being able to accomplish that in the time frame that we've been given. So we just want to make sure that we're documenting those, and then we have mitigation strategies for any risks that we identify. And then last but not least, we want to monitor the budget if required. So there are definitely some projects that have costs associated, and we're all, stewards of public funds, so we have to be careful with how we're spending the money. And so we need to be paying attention to licensing fees, paying vendors, and so on. And so you just want to make sure that you're monitoring those if that's part of your project. Okay. Next, so we're doing all these things, and oh my gosh, we have to communicate about it as well, right? So we have to be able to prepare and send status reports. So in those status reports, we're generally going to have what we've accomplished, what we're working on, what's coming next, and any risks that we've identified, since the charter and how we're mitigating those. So again, those status reports would go out to your project team, your stakeholders, your steering committee, anybody who needs to be kept up to date with the status of the project. And then you also want to make sure that you're communicating both up and out when needed. So communicating up means talking to your sponsor and your steering committee, and out means communicating out to all of your various stakeholder groups. So, all right, home stretch, you guys ready? Finally, we've done all the project monitoring. We've been keeping track of all these tasks. We've been communicating. And finally, we're ready to go live, right? We're going to prepare for that go live. So go live means that it's becoming operational, whatever it is that we're building. So whether it's a new software or we're rolling out hardware or we're renovating a room, right? We're ready to go live with this. So we might need to sign off on any testing. We might need to do training if it's something new. We might need to communicate about our go live date. And then we need to make sure that we're conducting that go, no go meeting so that we're ready on launch day. So that's the checklist. So now taking a look at this checklist, just kind of in your head or on a little note page or in Notepad on your computer, I want you to think about what skills you need to effectively lead or complete these tasks. So not the tasks themselves, but the skills that you need in order to manage these tasks. So be thinking about those, jot a couple down. Then what I'd like you to do is go ahead and open the chat and put some of those in the chat for us. So the skills, not the tasks, but the skills you need. And I am watching the chat for your responses. Yeah, absolutely. Organizational skills, communication skills, time management skills, excellent. Yeah, team management, leadership. Yes, listening. Good one, Richard. Yep, time management, flexibility, absolutely. Yeah, these are all those soft skills that are part of project management. We're giving you lots of checklists on the things to do, but these are really those soft skills that you're using in the background to accomplish all these tasks. Yep, reiterating, problem solving. I like that one, Jessica. Restorative conversations when things don't go as planned, right? Sometimes things don't go as planned and we have to do a little bit of cleanup. Absolutely. Yep, I like that one, Perry, being proactive, keeping everybody involved. Yep. Yeah, you guys nailed it. All those skills that we need to keep in mind, right? Yes, we can give you a template on how to communicate, but you still have to do the work. So yeah, excellent thoughts, you guys. Very good. Okay. So moving on from our previous checklist, we're going to move into our go live checklist. So we're going to talk a little bit about what you need to do to prepare to go live. So make sure everybody's ready for that launch. So again, it's the moment you've been working for weeks. Go live, right? We're going operational, whether it's new software that we're implementing, or we're rolling out Chromebooks, or we're replacing all the access points on our campus. Whatever it is, we're going live, right? We're turning the things on. So what do we need to keep in mind before we go live? So in this example, let's say ABC Unified's been working on a project to implement a new SIS, a new student information system, right? They did a lot of analysis, data cleanup, they loaded all their data, they evaluated security, they did all the testing in huge, massive training effort, right? Now, next month is their go live. The team's been working really hard, but is the system ready? Are their users ready? Gosh, are they ready? Is the project team ready to do this thing? So again, open up your chat. And what I do like you to do is think about if you were responsible for this. So if it's your SIS rolling out to your students and your teachers, and your parents, what worries or concerns or thoughts might you have about the go live? What would you want to make sure that, you're ready for? Yeah, data is accurate, right? Garbage in, garbage out. We got to make sure we got good data to begin with. Absolutely. Training for our staff. Yeah, excellent point, Richard. Want to make sure that training has been taken care of, right? Data integrity, permissions training. Yep. Testing various users types. Yes, absolutely. You guys are hitting it on the head, right? Oh, I like that one, Perry. Like if all hell breaks loose, do we have a backup plan, right? Yep, Corey was on the same page with you, right? If it blows up, now what? Yes, so having a backup plan, having a sandbox available. Jessica's like, yes to all of it.
Yeah, we had a traumatic rollout in JCCS.
Yes,
I'm
so
reliving things.
You're feeling this pain. I'm sorry to give you PTSD. Sorry, didn't mean to. Yeah, Andrew says, support train. Do they have the capacity, right? So, I mean, even when all hell breaks loose, and your help desk or whoever's taking those calls, are they ready for what's to be expected? What do they know what's going to happen? So, absolutely, all great questions. So, always to prepare for go live. So, to help you with your quest and to make sure we address all those things, we would want to have a go no go meeting. So, just a quick show of hands or thumbs. How many of you have participated in a go no go meeting? So, a thumbs up, or you can use the reactions to do a thumbs up. Have you been in a go no go meeting? I am not seeing. I'm seeing just a couple of thumbs. Okay. So, that being the case, let's talk about what you would do in a go no go meeting. So, what we provided for you is a go live checklist. So, this is just a very high level checklist. This is like a starting point. This is just our basic template. You can absolutely take this and customize it to your needs for whatever product you're rolling out, or your organization or your teams. But these are kind of the high level components that you all mentioned in the chat of things that you'd want to make sure were good to go before you went. So, let's just talk through some of these areas real quickly. So, testing and sign off, so has user acceptance testing been done if that's needed? Have all related issues been resolved before we're going live? Have we been given acceptance to proceed? If, do we have a change control board? Do they need to be notified, or does it need to be cleared through them? And then, as you saw lots of people say, do we have a backup plan if needed? If all things blow up, can we get out of this? You heard people talk about support, so have support staff been trained? Is there a plan for ongoing support? If we need to add it to our service catalog, has that been done? And has the vendor been notified if we need to engage them real quickly? And then do we have a real clear plan for that day one support, right? So we've cut over, we go live. Now what? The support know next steps and what's going to happen. And then you heard lots of folks talk about the training and communication piece. So has training been provided to all of the employees, all the users? Do we have job aids and videos? And have we really been communicating that go live date like early and frequently, right? So that's our kind of go live checklist. So we would go through this entire checklist and then have the entire project team say go, no go before we go live. So we want to give this to you as just a way to ensure that you're ready for your go lives, whatever they might be. So I know that was a lot in a little bit amount of time, but again, you've got all these resources and we've got lots of time towards the end. If you have any questions that pop up, feel free to save them for the end or put them in the chat and we'll be happy to address them. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Perry, who's going to take us through project closeout.
Awesome. Thanks, Risa. Okay, everyone, we've got another handy checklist. It's called the project closeout checklist. And this is to help you make sure that you wrap up your project with success and provide closure for all parties. The checklist is something that we've been using for probably about 2 years now, and it's really helped us as we close our projects. First, I want to share with you a poll that we did last year. I attend the CTO meeting here in San Diego County. We've got CTO and tech leaders who attend. We're on a quarterly basis now. Last year, we were on a monthly basis. But last September, so about a year ago, I reached out to all of these tech leaders and asked them, for which of your past projects, or for your past projects, at which phases do you wish things went a little better? And we explained, here's what happens in planning. You write a project charter and you have a kickoff meeting and you get yourself organized. Here's what happens at we went through all the pieces. So when we got the poll response back, we found that 25% of the CTOs wish things went better at the planning phase, 27% at the execution phase, and a startling 48% at closure. Startling, but not surprising, because in our experience as well, it was kind of the forgotten piece of a project. And really the mindset was, okay, we went live, on to the next thing. So a key takeaway here for you is keep in mind that the date of your go live is not the last day of your project. There are things that happen after the go live. Risa just talked about getting ready and day one support, but you now have this solution that is a living thing, be it hardware, software, a process, a new thing that's happening. So we need to build in time to make sure that we learn from the project, we get feedback around the project, and that we properly archive and set ourselves up for success. So a year later, when we're doing something similar and we're saying, oh, we could use that project charter, let's just copy that one. Well, where is it? Or where are all the tasks that we did for this thing? Like, we want to take some of the testing plan for that project and put into this one. If you're not organized with how you close your project, you might find yourself very scattered. It might not be living in a place where you can get back to it. So closure really helps you also get organized. So the document looks like this. I'm actually going to switch over to my DocuCam for this, but if you want to pull this out and look at it on your own, you can. Let me go ahead and switch here. Okay, here's my document camera. Let's get this a little bit closer here. Okay. I'll turn it on for us. Okay. So here is our project management closeout checklist. And at the top, I just jotted down a note just because I wanted to make sure I told you this. First of all, can you see this okay? Thumbs up if you can see it. I just want to make sure. Okay, awesome. All right, so when you close out a project, I just said that your project doesn't end at go live. You need to allot more time in your schedule. So how much time are you leaving after go live to close your project? It's going to vary, and there's really no hard and fast rule. But in my mind, in a smaller project, I leave myself about 1 to 2 weeks. And again, it could vary, but for a small project that didn't require a lot of time to roll out, there's some just loose ends I want to tidy up. For a medium to large project, it's really going to depend on several factors. So I'm just going to write 3+ weeks. I've had some closeouts last as long as 6 weeks because we needed to get some follow-up information about how the solution worked, or we needed to spend some time making sure that we got feedback from a lot of different people and parties. It's really going to depend. But my point here is when you're building out your project in the charter phase, give yourself time at the end, map it out and block off time, because you're going to want to properly close out your projects. It's going to help you. All right. So now looking at the first box here called lessons learned. This is where you're going to get people's feedback from your project team. And really the key word here is you want to be thorough. You want feedback from all your stakeholders. And this is especially true of everyone who worked on your project team. And I know there's a lot of people on this call today who don't plan projects, but you execute them. You're getting a lot of stuff done. You're the testers. You're the people who are configuring. You might be developing. You might be architecting things, or you've got a stake in the game. Your feedback is so critical in this process. So it's really important that we hear what went well, what didn't work, what could we do better next time. And really, it's for all of these things here. We really want to make sure that we get to our next project that we've got the workflow down. We're going to improve our quality. We're going to be more cost efficient. We're going to have better synergy. Whatever it is that's going to help us with the next project, that's really a big part of why we're doing this. It's to help us with that continuous improvement that we always are looking for. So we like to do our lessons learned where we set it up as a meeting. We provide people questions in advance, and pretty much it's always what went well, what didn't go well, and what are you proud of? And with those 3 guiding questions, let me jot that down up here for you. So what went well, what didn't go well, and what are you proud of? And we basically send that to people in advance. And with that, that's the guiding questions, and you get a ton of information from that. And a lot of that will help you figure out how you can get better next time. And this proud of question, it's important. We want people to feel good about the work that they're doing and know that they're making a difference. And this is going to tie in later when you celebrate. Okay, so that's the first thing we like to do. So you're going to need to allot some time so you have time for people to organize their thoughts, to come together and share them, to document all of this and save it in a place where you can get back to it later. Next up is survey. A survey is not something that you might do for every project, but for a project where you're impacting people, which most of your projects will do, it's great to find out if you met your project objectives. And remember earlier, we said that your objectives and success criteria that you document in the charter should be things that you can measure. Like if we're trying to save time, then we can find out, as a result of implementing this solution, are you now saving time? How much time? What, a day, an hour, a week? If your goal was to improve, how quickly teachers can access something, or implementing MFA, more security, like find out, are we seeing any difference as a result of this? So measuring satisfaction is part of that. Now with the survey, this is an element that requires quite a bit of time. And that's why I was saying it's going to depend on your closure phase, but a survey requires time. It requires time because first you have to plan it. You have to figure out the right questions. Then you need to set it up. You're probably going to put it in Google Forms or SurveyMonkey or some tool that you've got. You need to deploy the survey and give people time to actually respond to it. And then last, when you get it closed out, you need to go analyze the data and make some, synthesize it, figure out what does this tell us? What are we getting out of this? So again, if you're closing your project too quickly, you might even need time before you can deploy. Maybe people need to use your solution for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before you can find out what they think about it. So again, just think about the fact that this is an element that can really help you, having a survey to get the feedback and to find out if you're successful. It's also a great way to engage with your stakeholders, if they're teachers, principals, other district offices, students, whoever you were doing this for. It's a really great way to engage with them and have that two-way communication. Open up those lines of communication. All right, so in our opinion, these two things, the lessons learned and the survey, tie in with the next one. So that's why it says final presentation here, because survey results, they kind of tie in down here. All right, so this goes down here, this one goes here. All right, so what we have next in the third box is a final presentation or a final report. It kind of depends on your environment. We tend to create presentations because they're easier to share. So what we do is we create a final presentation, and the purpose is to take it back to our project sponsor, our steering committee, our board, maybe even our own team members, whoever it is that we want to say, hey, here's what we did. And generally what you're going to do is include key pieces in your final report. We like to put in a project overview, and we grab that straight from our project charter. It's pretty much the why we did the project. If it changed or tweaked over time, we'll tweak it. But basically, the charter is a great place to go back and say, here was our description of the project. Here were our goals. Here's what we're trying to achieve. So you can go grab that from your artifact. Then you pick up your survey results and you say, guess what? 89% were satisfied with the solution because blah, blah, blah. 92% said we had great communication. Like you showcase all of the data that you got from the survey, or you find out, only 15% said they're not using it. And we've got some work to do. I mean, there might be the flip side to your survey results. They might indicate some next steps for you. Lessons learned, that's where you put in to your presentation what we got out of this project and what we're taking forward. So we learned that we did not have a thorough testing process for our MFA project. We learned that we didn't allow enough time to test and it wasn't formal enough. And we didn't realize that people did access their apps in so many different ways. So when we roll out a security project next time, we're going to make sure that we put more testing time in. That's an example of a lesson learned. Okay. It's also great to share the things that people are proud of in this document. And then if there's leftover pieces, which there probably are, you can just highlight what's left so everyone who's hearing this final presentation knows what you might have left to do. Okay. And we highly encourage you to do this part before you do the next step. You don't have to be totally linear, like, your survey can happen before the lessons learned or vice versa, but we encourage you to get 1 and 2 done before number 3. And then number 3 pretty much feeds into number 4 because you can just lift all of this and take it over and share out pieces of it at your celebration. Okay, now on to celebration. In the work that we've done with the folks that we work with, for whatever reason, this seems to be a scary piece. I'm not sure why, because celebrating's so much fun, but really just keep these things in mind. It doesn't need to be complicated. It's just short, fun. It's a time to get people together, pull everyone back and let them know on your project team how awesome they are, what we accomplished, you know, provide some stats about from the survey or, you know, all those great things. Ask your sponsor to come and share some words. That's really meaningful when the person who really cared the most and was most vested in the project comes and shares out. I want to share with you what some celebrations have looked like for us virtually. And I'm just going to use a screenshot here. Hopefully you can see it well enough. Okay. Hold it up for you. This was from a big rollout we did for Microsoft Teams in 2020. We sent everyone to work from home. We didn't have anyone have phones at home. We didn't have a chat system built in. We didn't have any kind of unified communications platform. So we rolled out Teams pretty quickly. And our goal was to have people be able to use phones, to be able to communicate with each other, and to basically be able to provide service to our school districts. So we went with this Aloha theme, and you know, we just went with it. We picked Aloha because one of our team players from our network team said, man, I wish we could do the celebration in Hawaii. So we just were like, let's do it. But we included different actual testimonies. These boxes here were different testimonies from different people who we rolled out to. We acknowledged all of the people who were on the project under the Shaka. We had final words from our sponsor. That was Terry, came in and told us, you know, how impactful this was. And then here on this number 8 game, we found 8 songs that were about phone calls. So we had like Blondie, Call Me, New Edition. We had all sorts of, and we played little song clips about phone calls and people had to guess, because you know our whole project was rolling out phones. So we did this in 30 minutes and it was a happy time. So that's an example of a project that we did. This one, I know some of us have smaller teams at our organizations, but this one was a project we had that had lots of different teams on it. This was rolling out, we were trying to develop a new dashboard, right? We're gonna create this whole big dashboard. And so we got everyone together and basically we did on this one, this is a weird project, but we did a lessons learned at the same time. And then we did a celebration mixed in. So we kind of morphed it, but we gave out little awards, like we gave a light bulb award. And it was just a slide on a screen, but it was to our infrastructure and cloud team because they generated so many bright ideas. And then we gave the SpongeBob award to our media and creative services team because they had to be sponges and learn so quickly. So you can do whatever you want for your celebration. It's really about acknowledging people and bringing closure to the project. Okay, people need closure. We need closure for all sorts of things. We need it for our projects too. All right. These last things are have been mentioned briefly before, but again, archiving your stuff. So make sure that if you've got project files, you've got recorded meetings, you've got your project board. We happen to use Monday.com here, but your Excel file or anything that had the project plan, put that somewhere and save it and make sure that people know how to get to it later because it will become useful for you. And then hand over project ownership. So if someone else needs to take ownership of the system, the solution, the process, whatever it is, make sure that you hand that over because you don't want to, if you're not the appropriate party, you don't want to be stuck with it, right? So make sure it's now operationalized. So I'm going to write that word down actually, because that's really what we're talking about. Operationalize. We want to get our project out of project mode and into operations. All right. And then if you have any vendor stuff, payments, any budget items, that's something that you don't want to forget about as well. And then last, what we have is this complete sign off. It's the handshake with the person who wanted us to have the project done. And you might be the person in this case, so you might be shaking your own hand. But for many of us, we're reporting to others where they asked us to do this project. So this is basically making sure, hey, this is it. This is the end. We're done. And then at that point, that's when you go to happy hour and you are officially done with your project. That's if you truly follow the closure process. This is pretty much the model that you can follow. And again, you can take pieces that you need, you can shorten it if you have a smaller project, But the key thing here is getting feedback in, hearing from all sorts of people, thinking about how to get better, documenting, and celebrating. Love the GIF you dropped into the chat, Risa. So as I switch back to the PowerPoint, are there any questions that anyone had about the closure process that you might want to ask right now? Great handout. Thanks, Michelle. Risa, Andrew, did I miss anything that you wanted to chime in on around the closeout process?
I just want to add that we're all busy. We all think like we need to jump into the next big thing. It really pays dividends to take the time to do the lessons learned, do a small 30-minute celebration, just to kind of acknowledge your team, give them you know, the kudos that they deserve, and to really kind of take that breath before you jump on to the next project. So you know, I know we're all busy. I know like we're all like ready to get moving into the next project, but honestly can't stress enough how important it is to just take a little bit of time and do some of these closeout activities.
My ad is that, you know, just like everything else in project management, grab what makes sense for your project. You know, if it's a 3-day project, you're not going to spend a day doing closure, of course. But I want to underline lessons learned. At the conference that we held this year, I think I harped on it for a while, but lessons learned is one of my favorite things, even if you're not doing anything else project related. Working that into the way you work. After you do something big and new with your team, just holding lessons learned, a post-mortem, where everybody just gets together and talk about the successes, talk about things that can be improved, and talk about things that you're proud of, I think is such a healthy thing for your team. Even if it's not a project, it really builds on psychological safety in your team. It really helps your team do better work, and ultimately it becomes your culture. And I came from a team where we did that. We didn't do anything else project management related. We didn't have any structure around this stuff, but we always did lessons learned on big new things. And it just is such an open forum where you know, nobody's pointing fingers. We're not here to slam anybody. It's really just like, I think you did great on this, and you know, I noticed we had this little flub. How do we address that in the future? And it's all about not making the same mistakes, and really it's just culturally so good for the team. So if you could grab anything out of here, grab lessons learned. But I mean, the rest is great, but lessons learned is like it just is healthy for the team without even caring about project management.
And that's such a great point, Andrew. All of you who are here, if you even just think about taking one thing back, a small piece, anything, so it doesn't even have to be an entire tool, it could be a portion of something, that would be just a wonderful start in your journey with project management, with your work or with your team's work, your department, for your organization. Okay, so we've given you what we would call a starter kit. It's got 5 tools in it. We went through them today. So one of the things that we're curious about, as you've heard about all of these things, is which of these tools are you most excited about? And if you could put that into the chat for us, we're curious if there's something that's resonating with you at this moment today. Bradford, do you want to just come to all of our trainings? You're welcome. And then you can just say that every time and we'll I'm just kidding, but thank you for that. I'm really excited to hear that you're excited about all the tools. We're hearing project charter and execution, the project charter, the closeout checklist. Okay, nice, for a range of projects, the project charter. Yeah, Andrew fired up about lessons learned, project charter template and the samples. Execution checklist, because that means hands-on is happening. So many aspects of this make sense. Project charter and absolutely the handoffs checklist as well. The project charter. Okay, super cool. Now the project charter, again, we just like hit the surface for you. And if you're feeling good and you want to go off and running with that, that's great. You can. But we do have a video that you can watch. We have samples, other samples on our website that we'll point you to, so you can look at other samples. And we have a workshop coming up in November. If you want to try the hands-on and like get your hands dirty and actually practice with one, we would recommend that you come to that, because you'll get a by going through the process and actually trying it out, you'll start to get better at it. Awesome. Okay, so I actually have a second question for you, and if you're comfortable with it, please respond. The question is, which tool do you have the most questions about or feel the most certain about? And I'm kind of curious if it's the same as your first one, or if it's something different. Okay. I'm going to take the silent chat as not sure yet, or not feeling uncertain, possibly. I'm not sure how to interpret this, so I'll take that. Now, we do have time for questions and answers, so maybe now is a great time to address any of the questions you've got. I know that we had a question in the chat from Josh around comparing different project management software, like Asana with others. There are tons out there. So we happen to use project management software called Monday.com, but there's Trello and Basecamp, Asana, Microsoft Project, Microsoft Planner. There's tons. So really, you have to think about what it is that you're looking for. We like Monday.com because it offers transparency. It's visual. It is kind of an all-in-one, so we can communicate on tasks within the system rather than having to use email. So it keeps everything really contained. Now, if you want to go ahead and raise your hand to pose your question, we invite you to do that. There's a little reactions icon that you can click and raise hand, or you can just use the raise hand button if it's toward the bottom. And if you do that, I'll call on you so we can address your question. But I will also keep my eye on the chat. And Risa and Andrew, I'm just going to pose these to you, and let's popcorn it and see how we can address some of these questions. Okay. This one came from Corey. What happens when too many projects are started and they start to affect the timeline with other projects?
So Corey, I kind of like, you hit me, because this is the life I lived. And it's partly my fault because I have a lot of ideas and I want to get a lot done, and then I take on too much work. If you're working with the same sponsor, hopefully, you know, if you typically have one sponsor giving you all of your projects, you really need to like sit down with them and do strategic planning. Like, what are we doing right now? Because our team can only handle so much. You start doing task switching too much and you burn out from trying to do 5 projects at the same time. And it's exhausting as a project team member. So really strategic approach from your sponsor is the number one spot, assuming your sponsor is the same person. And the other one I'll say is, and this is really hard for me, sometimes you just have to say, no, we can't do it right now. We've got these things on the docket, and we can take it on as soon as we get done with X project. The real challenge, I think, here, though, is very easy to say yes and then try to do project number 3 at the same time. And then you say yes to the next one, and now you're doing project number 4, and it's really hard to figure out where that line is of, I have to say no now, because it's just another project. It's just another thing I can do. It's very tough to figure out where you got to say no, but eventually you do have to say, you know, we've got to put that in the queue for the next project.
Yeah, I can piggyback on that. So also, if you have the same project sponsor for multiple projects, you can go to the sponsor and say, look, we have this many resources and this many projects, like where's the priority? What do we need to get done, you know, immediately, and what can we you know, push back until we have the resources available. So it's really about having that resources conversation with your sponsor to make sure that they're aware. And again, this is where some of the project management software can help if you're using it, because you can see how many projects so-and-so is assigned, and how many tasks are assigned, and where, you know, on the schedule they're assigned. So you can kind of say, look, you know, Andrew's got 3 or 4 projects right now, but he's got more time available in January. Can this new project wait until January? You know, or if it's critical, what can we push off? So I think it's having that critical conversation.
Definitely.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of this, Joe asked kind of a question tied in. How does your team manage multiple large-scale projects at the same time? Any response to that?
Like as a PM or as the project management office? Because in the project management office, we use monday.com again, so we can see everything that's happening. We can filter by our tasks or deadlines, that kind of thing. As the PM just personally handling all of it, I would definitely, if you have any possibility, try not to schedule several big projects on top of each other. So we rate our projects as like a level 1, 2, or 3. And so like level 1 and 2, we're just helping somebody else do it. Level 3, we're taking on all the responsibility. I will wholeheartedly admit that having 2 or 3 big projects, level 3s on your plate at the same time is not very sustainable. So I would say definitely, as Andrew said, advocate for yourself, advocate for your project team, and try not to stack things that are not in your favor. You know, try and have those conversations with your leadership to say, look, this is how many resources I have. This is how much we can accomplish at one time, and schedule accordingly is the best advice I can give you.
So another comment or question, I'm going to keep us moving, is how have you addressed or worked through a situation where 1 or 2 people are holding up the project?
You want that, Andrew, or do you want me to take it?
It's a tough one. It's conditional, but really it's about identifying blockers. And, you know, maybe this is a one-on-one conversation, like, you know, what's blocking and how can we unblock it? Is it personal? Is it organizational? Is it just the nature of the work? Just figuring out what that block is and just being transparent and open. Like, we want to unblock this and get it going. Beyond that, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I'd say talk to the team member themselves and see if they can identify what's blocking them. If not, like oftentimes I'm managing a project, but I am not that person's boss. So sometimes I'll go talk to their boss if I need to find out. They might, same thing, they might say, hey, I've got 7 projects and I'm just not able to get them all done. So then that's a conversation with their boss to say, look, what we need to prioritize. This person can't get this all done. No fault of their own. There's only so many hours in the day. So I'd say kind of starting with the person, but then escalating from there as needed to kind of help. Again, as PMs, we consider ourselves, our role is to clear those roadblocks. So seeing what we can do to do that.
And earlier, Risa asked you what essential skills are needed to help with execution. And a lot of that is leadership, which is trust building, making sure that you're creating an environment where people can share and expose that. So just consider that the significance of communication and your leadership. If you're the person who's in that role, you want to create a situation where you've got a relationship with the people working on the team, where you're talking to them and they feel like they can come to you. So hopefully you're not in a situation where it's like a difficult or challenging conversation because you've done the work up front to create that culture. And it does take a while to establish. And I understand that every project team is different sometimes, or it could be the same every time. And so you got 2 different challenges with that, with either of those scenarios. But that's something to keep in mind, is really taking advantage of those soft skills. We've got a question from a smaller team. The question is, any suggestions for a small IT team? We're a team of 4.
I mean, I'd say yes, we're also a team of 4. So again, if you're the leader, definitely try to talk to your leadership about, again, prioritizing those tasks to make sure you are successful. You know, as Andrew said, if you take on too much, you're not going to do any of it well. So I would definitely have those conversations to figure out what are the priorities and focus on those and do them really well. So like try to do a few things really well instead of everything poorly, if that makes sense.
And I'm coming from a small team previously that was tasked with tons of projects and tons of operational support work. And it's very, very challenging to try to juggle both of those. Personally, my success was coming from a very light project management approach. So we found a really light, agile way of working that made a gigantic difference. That way we spent less time in meetings, less time on the PM work, and more time on just knocking out the task, because it is a fine balance of trying to manage it, but also trying to actually get it done. And so finding that sweet spot is can really make a difference.
Great. All right, taking us home. Our goal of this workshop was that you could say yes to these 3 things. Yes, I know the major phases of project management. And we're talking about really the core things that we talked about earlier, which is planning, execution, and closure. Those are the really 3 things that you should know, and that there's things that happen within each. Yes, I can use the SDCOE project charter template to plan my next project. And yes, I can refer to 3 checklists to help me execute and close my next project. Now, we have more for you. If you're hungry for more, like you just got the little taster appetizer today and you're just wanting more stuff, you can click on that EPMO icon there where the arrow is, and that's going to take you to our webpage that you could bookmark if you want to. Just highlighting a few things. We've got a project charter workshop coming up on November 9th from 10 to noon. Many of you indicated interest in learning more about the project charter, using it. So register, share the link with others to register, bring a team. We want this, we want to spread the word. We want to help people get organized. We are going to also be creating more training videos this year, but currently, if you go on our website under resources, we've got templates, job aids, and we've got a couple of videos that are there now with more to come, but this can expand your toolkit. We gave you a sample pack to get started. If you want more tools, go there. We've got more out there. And then third, we've heard from many people who say that seeing our samples gives them ideas. So you can go see our portfolio of current and past projects. We have artifacts from each one. They range from project charters to celebrations to final reports. Go click around and see what we've done. And maybe we've even done a project that you're going to be working on, and it might give you some ideas. So we really value your attendance today. We really welcome your engagement. If you want to email us after, please feel free. You got an email from epmo@sdcoe.net in your inbox already. So that's how you can respond back to us. But with that, we'd like to thank you for an awesome session, your engagement, and we hope to see you again at an upcoming workshop or event. Thank you, everyone.